Our next speaker is Mitra Samani. Mitra is a former political prisoner in Iran. Shortly after the 1979 revolution, she was arrested by the Iranian security forces for being a women's rights activist. Mitra is a board member of the Women's Freedom Forum and the California Women's Society for Democracy in Iran. She received her bachelor's degree in English translation from Open University in Tehran. She is married, has a daughter, and lives in West Hills, California. Mitra, thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Shakuvaju. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank my dear friend, Professor Pataksal, for this opportunity so I can share with you my story and views regarding gross human rights violations in Iran. In the words of Nelson Mandela, the prison system of a government reflects the intrinsic characteristics and properties of that government in the most concise and exposed way. I was born in Tehran, first child of 3 in a middle-class family. I was 15 at the time of Iran's revolution in 1979. I remind you that when religious extremists took control in Iran, the oppression of women and girls were the first to be adopted. I felt the responsibility to oppose the misogynist laws and became an activist. I was very outspoken at my high school, so I got targeted. I was snatched at 5 p.m. on September 7th, 1981, for distributing flyers for women's rights activities and spent 4 hellish years in notorious Evin prison in Tehran. I was so scared and shocked by what I was witnessing. Tortures began immediately. The harrowing sounds of screams and floggings were nonstop. Cruelty and tortures had no limits, like flogging, electrocution, hanging by wrists while being beaten up, and rape. Hence, many, especially the young teenagers, mentally as well as physically, could not take it and lost their sanity or committed suicide. Mothers with newborn infants to 70-year-old grandmothers, pregnant women to teenagers were all around me in prison. I had asked myself at the time why these guards were so cruel and vicious and violent against women. This came from their ideology that considers women as second-class citizens. I'm forever grateful to the brave mothers and women who have helped me and other newcomers to keep our sanity. Their guidance, their motherhood instincts, and their sisterhood is what have saved me. Unfortunately, medieval misogyny continues in prisons and in public to this day, with the same perpetrators still in power. Beginning in July of 1988, thousands of political dissidents held in prisons across Iran were forcibly disappeared suddenly. They were mostly young men and women, some just teenagers, unjustly imprisoned because of their political opinions and nonviolent political activities. Prisons across the country were put on lockdown, and the authorities suspended family visits without giving any reasons. For months, nothing was heard. Gradually, terrifying rumors began to circulate about mass secret executions and the dumping of bodies in unmarked mass graves. Families' worst fears were confirmed from late October of 1988, when prison visits resumed and authorities informed many families that their loved ones have been executed. However, over the last 32 years, the authorities have cruelly denied them not only a body to mourn over, but also the truth about when, how, and why their loved ones were killed, what happened to them in their last moments, and where their remains are buried. On October 2018, Amnesty International sent the Iranian authorities a summary of its findings and requested related information and clarifications, but has so far received no response. There is no doubt that during the course of several months, thousands of political dissidents were systematically subjected to enforced disappearance in Iranian detention facilities across the country. Many of those killed were subjected to torture and other cruel treatment or punishment in the process. More than 30,000 political prisoners were executed in that summer. Last December, after 32 years, top human rights experts of the United Nations finally described the massacre of political prisoners in Iran as crime against humanity, and after the Second World War, the greatest crime of the century. One of my cousins was executed at that time. He was in prison for 7 years and was supposed to get released the following year. But the Iranian regime just executed him without even informing the family. And up to this day, we don't even know where his burial site is. Amnesty International released multiple reports on how female prisoners are subjected to harshest torture and confinement. These harsh treatments are to break their resistance and to punish them for rising up. Now that I look back to my past, I realize what a heavy responsibility I have to call on all international bodies to speak and act in solidarity with all political prisoners in Iran and not allow their voices to be silenced. For a century, Iranian women have been on the forefront of fight against dictatorship, and their uttermost determination is freedom and equality. But one thing is for certain, despite all these atrocities, there is an organized resistance movement, and more than 50% of its leadership are women. In Iran, many young women have organized resistance units. They won't give up and they won't give in. They are determined to bring about change, and we are hoping for that bright future soon. Thank you so much for the time, and happy Nowruz, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mitra. I've heard your memories of prison many times, and each time it touches me. And I can't believe we're going to celebrate another Persian New Year with our sisters in jail. So I pray for them. I pray for you. And we can and we must put this regime in the dustbin of history, and we shall do that. We will.